Rain hammered the courthouse steps like it wanted to scrub the world clean. But inside, Isabella Ruiz felt dirtier than ever. She clutched a thin folder to her chest, fingers stiff from the cold, and stared at the tall glass doors of the royal courtroom. Her heart pounded so hard it made her ears ring. "Stand tall, Bella," Victor whispered at her side. His hand pressed at her back in what others might think was support, but she felt the sharp pinch of his nails. "Remember what we rehearsed. You'll tell the king I have managed your mother's estate well. You'll say you're grateful." Grateful. The word tasted bitter in her mouth. How could she be grateful to the man who locked the kitchen at night so she went hungry, who laughed when she begged for bus fare, who told her no one would ever believe her over him? The bailiff's voice boomed. "All rise." The room stood. The heavy doors opened, and the Alpha King entered. George. He didn't need a crown. His presence filled the chamber like thunder. Broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, every step deliberate. Even humans bowed their heads when he passed, their instincts reminding them who ruled here. Bella's knees shook, but she forced herself still. She was 25 years old, not a child. Yet Victor's shadow smothered her. If she spoke the truth, would anyone listen? The king's deep voice rolled through the hall. "Call the matter." The clerk adjusted her papers. Estate of Elena Ruiz. Petition for guardianship and asset control. At the sound of her mother's name, Bella's throat tightened. Her mother had been the only warmth in her life, and when she died, all warmth went with her. Victor stepped forward, bowing low. "Your Majesty, my late wife's daughter is tender-hearted, unfit for such heavy burdens. I have paid debts, kept the home, and guided her. I only ask the court to bless my stewardship." Bella's hands trembled, but she lifted the folder. Inside was a letter, written in her mother's careful handwriting. Proof that Victor lied. She opened her mouth. The slap came so fast she barely saw his hand move. Her cheek exploded with pain, her head snapping sideways. The folder flew from her grip, papers scattering like white birds across the black floor. Gasps filled the room. A murmur rose, sharp and shocked. Victor's smile didn't falter. He pressed a hand to his chest and turned toward the king. "Forgive her, sire. She is hysterical." Bella stayed frozen, cheek burning, vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. This was what she knew. Stay still, stay quiet, survive. But the air shifted. A growl rolled from the bench. "Low, dangerous, ancient." Every hair on Bella's arms lifted. She turned, and her heart stopped. King George was on his feet. His eyes no longer cold brown but blazing molten gold. A wolf's fury barely caged. The entire courtroom held its breath. "Do it again," he said, voice steady as steel. "And die where you stand." The words weren't shouted, but they struck harder than thunder. The room seemed to shrink around them. Victor's confident mask faltered. "Your Majesty," he stammered, "this is a family matter." George stepped down from the bench. He didn't hurry. He didn't need to. Each step was controlled, lethal, like a storm deciding where to break. He stopped in front of Bella. For the first time in years, someone looked at her and saw more than a burden. He saw the bruise blooming on her cheek. He saw the thin scars half hidden under her sleeve. His jaw clenched. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. Her lips parted, truth clawing to be spoken. But Victor's hand closed cruelly on her arm. Pain stabbed through her flesh. "Enough," George said. He didn't raise his voice, yet guards moved instantly. They wrenched Victor's hand away and held him fast. The clerk's voice trembled as she read. Wolf Law, Title 2, Section 1. No hand is laid on the weak in the court of the king. To strike one under judgment is to strike the crown. Punishment is death. The room froze. The law was clear. Victor tried to laugh, thin and desperate. "Surely you would not, over a slap." The king's gaze turned on him, colder than ice. "You did not strike over her. You struck her. He looked back at Bella. Something raw flickered across his face, like a man fighting with himself. Tell me your name. Her voice shook but rose. Isabella. People call me Bella. George repeated it softly, testing it like a vow. Bella. His eyes softened just a fraction, then hardened again as he faced the court. By the right of the crown, he said, I place Isabella Ruiz under my protection. Gasps exploded. The councilmen surged to their feet. Lady Clarissa, seated near the front, went pale with rage. The courtroom dissolved into chaos, but Bella barely heard it. Victor screamed as guards dragged him away. She is mine. My ward, my property. George's wolf surged so close Bella swore she saw claws in his hands. His voice thundered. She is no one's property. The court shook with uproar, but in the center of it all Bella stood, cheeks stinging, heart racing, a single thought anchoring her in the storm. Someone had finally drawn a line, and for the first time since her mother died, she was on the side that lived. Do you think George is protecting Bella because of duty, or because his heart has already chosen her? Drop your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Chapter 1. The sound of chains echoed long after Victor was dragged out of the royal courtroom. Bella stood rooted in place, her arms stiff at her sides, her cheek throbbing where his hand had struck. She could still feel the heat of the Alpha King's gaze on her, steady and unyielding, like a weight that refused to let her collapse. The courtroom had dissolved into a frenzy. The Council of Elders barked objections. Some wolves muttered in outrage, others whispered with fascination. Humans shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure if they had just witnessed justice or disaster. Bella wanted to disappear, but the Alpha King didn't let her. Captain, George said, his deep voice cutting through the uproar like a blade. Escort her out. Now. A tall man with sharp eyes and a soldier's posture stepped forward. Finn Carter. His dark suit didn't soften the air of danger he carried. He extended a hand, not quite touching her. This way, miss. Bella swallowed hard. Her legs felt like stone, but she forced them to move. She gathered her scattered papers from the floor, her fingers brushing the grocery list with her mother's handwriting. That small smiley face nearly undid her. She stuffed it back into the folder and followed Finn out of the courtroom. The corridors of the courthouse felt colder than the rain outside. Bella hugged her arms around herself, trying not to shake. Every step echoed too loudly, reminding her that the eyes of the city had just seen her shame and her rescue. They reached a side exit where the storm still fell heavy. A sleek black car waited at the curb, rain sliding down its windows. Finn opened the back door. Inside. Bella hesitated. Where are you taking me? To the palace, Finn said simply. For your safety. Her chest tightened. The palace. She had never imagined setting foot near it. That fortress of glass and stone belonged to rulers, not girls like her. Yet Victor's furious eyes haunted her. She knew if she went home now, she might not live to see morning. She slid into the back seat. Finn joined her, his expression unreadable as the driver pulled away. For a long time, the only sound was rain on the roof and the hum of the engine. Bella pressed her hand to her cheek, wincing at the bruise forming. Finn finally spoke. You should know what this means. The king placing you under his protection. It's not a small matter. The council will fight it. I didn't ask him to, Bella whispered. Her voice shook despite her effort. I don't even know why she stopped. The truth burned on her tongue. She didn't know why the king's golden eyes had locked on her like she was the only person in the world. Finn studied her for a moment, then looked away. Doesn't matter what you asked. His wolf has decided. The words sent a shiver down her spine. She looked out the window, watching the courthouse shrink into the distance. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the rain. She was afraid of what came next. The palace loomed against the storm like a beast carved in stone. High walls wrapped around towers of steel and glass. Guards in dark uniforms stood like statues at the gates. Bella's breath caught as the car rolled through. She had grown up walking past these walls, imagining what secrets they hid. Now she was inside, and the truth was more intimidating than any dream. The car stopped beneath a grand archway. Finn led her inside. The palace floors gleamed, polished until her reflection stared back at her. The air smelled faintly of pine and smoke, like the forest at night. A man waited near the stairs, slightly younger, with a softer face and gentle eyes. He carried a leather satchel over one shoulder. "This is Dr. Noah Tran," Finn said. "Palace physician." Noah gave Bella a kind smile. "Let's have a look at that cheek." Bella stiffened. She wasn't used to gentle tones. "I'm fine." "You're not," Noah said softly but without pity. He opened his satchel, pulled out a small light, and examined the swelling. "Bruised. No fracture. I'll give you something to keep it from swelling further." Bella nodded, embarrassed by the heat rising to her face. Victor never let her see a doctor for the bruises he left. To have someone check her so carefully felt strange, almost unreal. Noah packed away his tools. "You'll be safe here. The king doesn't make empty promises." Safe. The word sounded fragile, almost impossible. Bella hugged herself tighter. George appeared at the top of the stairs, descending slowly, his presence filling the hall like a tide. His suit jacket was gone now, his sleeves rolled up. He looked less like a king and more like a man, but no less dangerous. Bella froze, her breath catching. His golden eyes were gone, replaced with calm brown, but the memory of that fire still burned in her mind. "You'll stay in the guest wing tonight," George said, his voice even. "You won't return to that house." Bella's heart jumped. "But my things. Finn will retrieve them." George's tone left no room for argument. "You will not see your stepfather again. Not unless it is under my judgment." Her lips trembled. "The council, they'll hate me." George's eyes locked on hers, steady and unflinching. "Let them." For a moment, neither of them moved. Bella felt something shift inside her chest, a strange pull, terrifying and magnetic. She looked away, clutching the folder tighter. George turned to Finn. "Post guards at her door." Then softer, almost to himself. "No one touches her again." Bella's breath caught at the words. She didn't know if he meant them as law or vow. Either way, for the first time in years she believed them. Chapter 2. The guest wing of the palace was quiet, almost too quiet. Bella stood just inside her new room, uncertain if she was meant to sit, lie down, or simply vanish into the walls. The space was bigger than her entire apartment back home. Pale rugs covered polished wood floors. A wide bed was neatly made, and a tall window overlooked the rain-washed city. On the table sat a tray with tea and fruit. She hugged her arms around herself, not daring to touch the food. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by her shallow breaths. She wasn't used to silence meaning safety. In Victor's house, silence usually meant something worse was coming. The door clicked. Finn, the king's captain, entered with a steady stride. He placed a small bag on the chair. "Your belongings," he said. His eyes studied her bruise for a second, then moved away. "Guards will be at your door. You'll stay here until further notice." Bella glanced at the bag, then back at him. "Why is the king doing this? He doesn't even know me." Finn's jaw tightened. "Maybe his wolf does." She didn't know what to say to that. She nodded, and he left, closing the door softly behind him. Alone again, Bella knelt by the chair and opened the bag. Inside were 2 shirts, worn jeans, her sneakers, and tucked in the corner, a photo of her and her mother at a summer fair. Bella's breath caught. Her mother's smile lit the picture, the same smile that had once made their small kitchen feel like home. Bella pressed the photo to her chest until her ribs ached. She walked to the mirror. The bruise on her cheek had darkened, purple and angry. She touched it, then drew back quickly. Her reflection looked back at her with tired eyes. But there was something else there too. Something new. For the first time, she wasn't seeing a victim. She was seeing someone the Alpha King himself had stood for. She sat on the bed and finally sipped the tea. It was warm, calming, and she realized how hungry she was. She ate a piece of fruit, the sweetness sharp after so many nights of stale bread. Tears pricked her eyes, not from the pain but from the strange, unfamiliar feeling spreading through her chest. Safety. She wasn't sure how long it would last, but for tonight, she let herself believe it. Across the palace, George stood by the tall windows of his private office. The storm had slowed, but the city still glistened under wet streetlights. His wolf stirred inside him, restless, furious at what had happened in court. He had ruled with discipline for years, but the moment Victor's hand struck Bella, his control had snapped. He should have walked away. He should have let the law play out. But the law hadn't been enough. The wolf had chosen for him. Finn entered quietly. She's settled in the guest wing. Guards are posted. George didn't turn from the window. And Victor? Already pulling strings. The council will use this against you. George exhaled slowly. Let them try. For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain tapped at the glass like impatient fingers. George finally looked away from the city. He wasn't a man who let his emotions show, but tonight the memory of Bella's frightened eyes followed him like a shadow. His wolf had recognized something George himself couldn't yet name. She's under my protection now, he said, more to himself than to Finn. And no one touches what's mine. Back in the guest wing, Bella lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every sound in the hallway made her tense. But each time she heard the quiet shuffle of boots outside her door, she reminded herself. Those steps weren't coming to hurt her. They were standing guard. She turned her head to look at the photo of her mother on the nightstand. Her mother had always told her, "One day, Bella, you'll be stronger than the pain." Maybe that day had finally begun.
Chapter 3. Bella woke to the scent of coffee and the sound of soft footsteps. A palace maid named Ruth set a tray on the table, toast, fruit, and a steaming cup. She glanced at Bella's bruise, pity flickering in her eyes. "Eat something," Ruth said. "The healer will come after." Bella nodded, though her stomach twisted. When Ruth left, the silence pressed in again. She forced herself to sip the coffee, telling herself she needed the strength. A knock came. This time it was Mira, the healer. She moved with quiet confidence, her hands cool as she dabbed salve over Bella's bruise. "It will fade," Mira said, "but you'll feel it for a while. If your chest tightens, breathe slow. Remember, you are safe here." Safe. The word stung almost as much as the bruise. Bella wasn't sure if she believed it yet. When Mira left, Finn appeared. He stood in the doorway, arms folded. "There's noise outside. Protests. Some people think the king should not have humiliated your stepfather in court." Bella's hands curled into fists. "Humiliated? He hit me." Finn's eyes softened for a moment. Respectable men don't strike their daughters. But politics likes masks. Victor is already playing one. Bella lowered her gaze. "What happens now?" "Lady Clarissa has asked for an audience." His tone hardened. "She'll try to see you. Don't open your door." Bella swallowed. She knew Clarissa's name. Raised to be Luna, beautiful, untouchable. The kind of woman people expected at the king's side. The thought of her walking these halls made Bella's skin prickle. Meanwhile, George stood in his private chamber, rain streaking the tall windows. Finn set a folder on the desk. Victor's allies, counselors he'd bribed, debts he'd covered. "They'll call you reckless," Finn warned. George's wolf stirred inside him. He'd replayed the moment in court 100 times, The strike, Bella Small gasped. The words his wolf had ripped out. Slap her again and die. Let them call me reckless, George said. The line is drawn. By noon, the palace steps were crowded with cameras. Lady Clarissa arrived in gray silk, smiling as if the storm had parted just for her. She swept into the throne room, her voice soft with false concern. Our people are unsettled, she said. A public threat. A stray girl taken under protection. Let me help you heal the scandal. George's gaze cut sharp. Heal it how? By sending her back to be struck again. Clarissa tilted her head, pity in her eyes. By reminding the city that a king is not ruled by a girl's tears. Silence stretched. Finn tensed at the wall. George's wolf surged close to the surface, but he held his voice even. A king is ruled by the law, he said, and the law protects the vulnerable. If the council disagrees, they can meet me in session this afternoon. Clarissa's smile thinned, but she bowed gracefully before leaving. From her window, Bella watched the courtyard. The city churned beyond the gates, some shouting for her, others against her. She spotted George crossing the stone yard, his stride steady, his shoulders rigid. He didn't look up, didn't pause. Her palm tingled where the gavel had slammed. She didn't yet know how to be protected. She only knew the king had drawn a line in front of everyone, and somehow, that line now carried her name. If this moment pulled you in, subscribe to my channel now. There's so much more waiting in the next chapters.
Chapter 4. The courthouse loomed larger than Bella remembered. Its walls of stone and steel seemed carved to intimidate. As Finn escorted her through the side entrance, she tried to steady her breathing. Today wasn't about her stepfather's guilt anymore. Today the council would decide whether the king's defense of her had crossed into scandal. Inside, the chamber buzzed with voices. Rows of benches overflowed with humans and wolves alike. Politicians in press suits, pack leaders with sharp eyes, curious citizens whispering about the girl who had drawn the Alpha King's wrath. Bella kept her head down. At the far end, beneath the royal crest, George stood waiting. No crown, no robe, just a dark suit that sharpened his shoulders. His gaze swept the room, steady and commanding, but when it landed on Bella, it softened. Just a flicker, just enough for her to feel it. The council of elders sat like stone statues on the raised bench. Gray hair, silver canes, and eyes colder than the marble beneath them. Mercer, the eldest, tapped his gavel once. The noise died instantly. "We are here," Mercer said, "to address an outburst that threatens the balance between law and crown. The Alpha King interfered in a matter of domestic discipline. He threatened death in open court, and he claimed a girl of no standing." His gaze pinned Bella like a nail. "This girl." Whispers rippled. Bella's hands trembled. Discipline? That was what they called it. Her stepfather's slap still burned like a brand. George's voice cut through the chamber, low and steady. "Call it what it was. Abuse. I will not apologize for stopping it." Another elder sneered. "The Alpha King cannot be ruled by temper. To threaten a citizen. To defend the weak is not temper," George interrupted. His wolf edged into the words, making the air vibrate. "It is law, and if the council has forgotten that, I will remind them." The crowd stirred, some murmuring approval, others shaking their heads. Bella wanted to vanish, but her chest tightened with something new, something close to pride. Victor was brought in next. His face was a mask of false sorrow, his hands bound. He bowed low. "Great Council, I am a man wronged. My own stepdaughter shamed me before the court. The king struck me with his words, though I struck no blow worthy of death." Bella flinched. "Liar." She touched her cheek, the bruise still fading. Mercer's gaze shifted back to George. this claim of protection. Do you stand by it? George's eyes didn't waver. I do. Even knowing it breaks tradition. Tradition does not outweigh justice. The elders exchanged glances. Clarissa rose from her seat among the nobles, her voice sweet as poison. Justice is not the issue. Stability is. A king who chooses a mate from the gutter threatens the order we all rely on. Gasps rippled. Bella's face burned, shame and fury twisting inside her. She wanted to scream that she hadn't asked for any of this, but her voice caught in her throat. George's hand clenched at his side. Careful, Clarissa. You speak against a woman under my protection. That is a line you will not cross again. The chamber held its breath. Bella looked at him, stunned. He wasn't just defending her from Victor. He was defending her from the entire weight of tradition, even if it cost him his throne. Mercer's gavel cracked the silence. Enough. The council will deliberate. Until then, the girl remains in the king's custody. But know this, Alpha Hale, your crown hangs by a thread. The session ended in uproar. Some cheered, some jeered, all eyes on Bella as Finn guided her out. Her legs shook, but inside, something steadier began to form. She wasn't invisible anymore, and that terrified her almost as much as it freed her.
Chapter 5. The council's words clung to Bella long after she left the chamber. Your crown hangs by a thread. It wasn't her crown, yet somehow the noose felt wrapped around her neck too. Back in the palace, she sat by the tall window in her room, watching the protests swell beyond the gates. Some voices shouted her name with anger, others with hope. To the crowd, she wasn't Bella anymore. She was a symbol, either of scandal or of justice. She hated both. Her hands shook as she pressed her mother's photo against her chest. I didn't ask for this. I only wanted peace. The door opened. George stepped in. He carried no guards, no advisors, just himself. For a man who ruled an empire, he walked as if he carried storms in his shoulders. You shouldn't be near the windows, he said quietly. I wanted to see, Bella murmured. His gaze followed hers to the crowd outside. They will shout themselves hoarse, but their noise doesn't decide the law. Bella swallowed. The council does. His jaw tightened. The council likes to think so, but I am king. Silence filled the room. He moved closer, his presence steadying even when it unnerved her. Did Clarissa speak to you? No, Bella said, shaking her head. But she wanted to. George studied her, then nodded once. Stay away from her. Wolves with envy bite hardest. Bella looked at him, fear and disbelief tangled inside her. Why me? The words tore out before she could stop them. Why put yourself in danger for someone like me? George's eyes softened, but only for a breath. Because my wolf will not let you be hurt again. And because law without protection is nothing. Her throat closed. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust. But trust was a wound in her, still raw. That night, the palace grew too still. Finn doubled the guards, but the halls echoed with uneasy quiet. Bella couldn't sleep. Each creak of wood pulled her upright. She remembered Myra's advice and tried to breathe slow, but her chest refused to loosen. Then glass shattered. She flinched, clutching the blanket. Shouts rose in the hall. The door burst open and Finn stormed inside, sword drawn. Stay behind me. A shadow slipped through the broken window. Tall, cloaked, with eyes that gleamed red in the torchlight. A rogue wolf. It smiled at her. So this is the king's precious girl. Bella froze. Her limbs wouldn't move. George appeared in the doorway like thunder, his voice a growl wrapped in steel. Step away from her. The rogue laughed low. Careful, Majesty. She makes you weak. The council already whispers. Shall I prove them right? The wolf shifted, bones cracking for bristling. But George was faster. His own shift rippled under his skin, golden eyes burning as he lunged. The clash shook the chamber. Fangs, claws, the sound of bodies colliding like stone. Bella pressed against the wall, breath ragged. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body locked. Then she saw it. On the desk beside her, a heavy iron candlestick. Her fingers closed around it. When the rogue broke free, snarling, lunging toward her, Bella swung with every ounce of strength left in her bones. The iron struck its skull with a crack. The beast staggered. George seized the opening, jaws closing around its throat. One brutal snap, and silence. The wolf crumpled to the floor, shifting back into a bloodied man. Dead. George shifted back, chest heaving. His shirt was torn, his side bleeding. His eyes locked on Bella. Not anger. Not pity. Something fierce and unspoken. "You're safe," he said, voice rough. Bella's knees gave way. She sank to the floor, the candlestick clattering from her hands. He knew my name." George crouched, steadying her shoulders. "That means someone sent him. Someone who knew you were here." His jaw set like iron. "The council will pay for this." Bella shook her head, tears streaking her face. "They'll say it's my fault. That I'm making you weak." George's gaze burned. "No. They'll learn you're what makes me dangerous." By dawn, the rogue's body was gone, but the bloodstains on the rug remained. Finn barked orders in clipped tones, doubling security again. Mira stitched George's side, her hands steady even as her eyes betrayed worry. Bella sat silent, the weight of last night heavy on her chest. She had swung the candlestick. She had drawn blood. She had survived. But survival, she realized, was no longer enough. The world outside wanted her gone. The council wanted her silenced. Clarissa wanted her erased. And yet, the king had called her his. Bella touched the fading bruise on her cheek, then the scar the candlestick had left on her palm. For the first time, she wondered if her mother's words had been prophecy. "One day, Bella, you'll be stronger than the pain." Maybe that day had come. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel now if you haven't, because there's so much more coming in the next chapters. Chapter 6. The palace didn't sleep after the attack. Guards filled the corridors, torches blazed through the night, and every window was reinforced with iron shutters. Yet Bella couldn't shake the image of the rogue's eyes, red, greedy, and too certain when he called her the king's girl. She sat in her chamber as dawn crept pale across the sky. Her hands still trembled, remembering the weight of the candlestick. She had saved herself, yes, but only because George had been there to finish the fight. Without him, she would already be buried under stone. The door opened softly. Mira entered with a fresh bandage roll in hand. "The king was injured," she explained. "He insists it's nothing, but he'll bleed more if he doesn't rest." Bella rose quickly. "Where is he?" "In his chamber." Mira studied her, then placed the roll in Bella's hand. "He listens to few. He may listen to you." Bella hesitated, but her feet carried her before her mind could argue. George's chamber was wide, shadowed by heavy drapes. He sat on the edge of the bed, shirt undone, blood staining his side where Myra's stitches pulled against muscle. His wolf shimmered beneath the surface, restless, angry. "You should be resting," Bella said quietly. His head lifted, eyes meeting hers. The golden glow flickered before dimming back to human brown. "So should you." She stepped closer, holding up the bandages. "Let me help." For a moment he didn't move, as if unused to anyone offering. Then he nodded once. Bella knelt beside him, her hands careful as she wrapped the cloth around his ribs. Her fingers brushed his skin, warm, scarred, unyielding. "You saved me last night," he said suddenly. Bella froze. "I hit him because I was afraid. And that fear saved us both." His voice dropped low. "Don't diminish it." Her chest tightened. "Everyone says I make you weak." George caught her wrist gently, his grip firm but not cruel. "Weak," You remind me what the crown is for. Without that, what is strength worth? Bella's breath caught. For a heartbeat, the room was too small, too charged. She looked away quickly, finishing the bandage. By mid-morning, Finn stormed into the war room where George waited. Bella lingered near the doorway, unseen but listening. The council denies sending the rogue, Finn reported. But the body carried markings, an old clan symbol from the northern Pax. Pax loyal to Mercer. George's eyes hardened. He's testing me. He thinks I'll fold under pressure. Or under scandal, Finn muttered. The city whispers louder every hour. Some call Bella your mate. Others call her your downfall. Bella stiffened at her name. She pressed against the wall, shame and fear clawing at her chest. George didn't flinch. Let them whisper. My wolf chose. That isn't undone by gossip. Finn leaned closer. And if the council declares you unfit? Then I remind them why wolves still bow when I enter a room. George said, voice like steel. Later, Bella found herself walking the palace gardens with Ruth, who carried a basket of herbs for the kitchens. The air was fresh with pine and damp soil, but even here, guards patrolled every corner. Ruth's voice was low. Do you know what they're saying about you outside these walls? Bella shook her head. That you're cursed. That you bewitched the king. That his crown cracks because of you. Ruth glanced at her, eyes softening. But others call you Hope. A girl who forced the law to see what it didn't want to. Bella's throat tightened. I didn't force anything. Sometimes just surviving forces change, Ruth said. Bella stopped walking. Her chest rose and fell too fast. She wasn't built for this. Courts, councils, whispers of war. Yet somehow she had become the center of it. That night, George called a meeting in the Great Hall. Bella sat quietly at the edge while nobles, captains, and counselors' spies filled the space. The Alpha King stood at the head, his voice carrying through the vaulted chamber. A rogue entered my palace and struck at what is mine, he declared. That is not rebellion, it is war. Gasps rippled. Mercer hides behind tradition, George continued. But tradition does not shield him from law. If the council wants to challenge me, let them do it openly, not with assassins in the dark. Bella's heart pounded as his words echoed. For the first time, she realized he wasn't only protecting her. He was declaring her his line in the sand, daring the kingdom itself to cross it. And in the heavy silence that followed, she wondered if she was strong enough to stand there with him.
Chapter 7. Mira shook Bella awake before dawn. Up, eat. Then we make your hands steady. They slipped to the palace gym while the building still breathed in sleep. Mira wrapped Bella's knuckles and set her feet. You don't have to win. You only need a breath. Palm heel to nose. Knee to thigh. Twist out of a grip. Bella moved stiff, then smoother, sweat trickling at her temple. On the last drill she stumbled, shame flaring. Mira caught her wrist. You survived alone for years, she said. That wasn't weakness. That was endurance. Again. By 10, the summons arrived. Council inquiry. The courthouse rose out of river fog, half fortress, half cathedral. On the steps, two crowds mixed, tradition first and protect the vulnerable. Phones lifted like spears. Mira parked close. Head high, she murmured. A woman in winter white will block their path. Lady Clarissa smiled, like ice. So the servant arrives. I asked for quiet, Bella said. Not a crown. Crowns find trouble. Clarissa's eyes dipped to Bella's wrapped hand. You bruise prettily. Cameras adore that. Bella swallowed. I'm not here for their love. Clarissa drifted on, perfume and threat. Inside, the royal courtroom thrummed. George sat beneath the crescent banner, elders to his right, human magistrates to his left. When Bella entered, his gaze found her. The gold in it eased, then hardened again for the room. Victor spoke first, palms lifted in grief. Since my wife's death, I alone have carried Isabella's care. She is unwell. The king has influenced her. I petition for guardianship and access to funds to secure treatment. Funds. Her mother's savings. A gray-bearded elder peered down. Did you coerce a claim, Majesty? No, George said, iron flat. Victor tipped his head. He threatened me for disciplining my daughter. The room tilted. Old fear tried to climb Bella's spine. She pressed her heels into the floor and held still. George rose. The chamber quieted by instinct. He looked at Victor the way weather looks at sparks. Slap her again, he said, low and carrying, and die. Silence tightened like a rope. Elders bristled. Magistrates stiffened. Wolves went stone still. Your Majesty, the senior elder snapped, you cannot threaten a citizen in court. I can promise protection, George replied. I just did. The magistrate turned to Bella. Miss Isabella, do you wish to speak? Her mouth went dry. Myra's voice from the gym, one breath. Bella stood. Yes. At the stand, her hands shook. Her words did not. After my mother died, the house got quiet. Then loud in the wrong way. When I spilled, I paid. When I was late, I paid. He told me I made him look bad. He told me if I told anyone, I'd ruin him. And myself. She exhaled. 3 days ago, he hit me here. I didn't want a king. I wanted it to stop. Victor gave a brittle laugh. She's dramatic. Bella didn't look at him. I learned to be small. It didn't save me. Abusers stop when someone bigger stands in the doorway. A human jurist leaned forward. Do you fear returning to his custody? Yes. Lady Clarissa rose, smooth as silk, moving. Yet thrones do not bend for one girl's tears. We have a Luna to choose. We have old law. Laws should protect the weakest first, Bella said softly. Otherwise they're only cages. The elders whispered in a tight knot. The senior elder rapped the gavel. Interim ruling. Isabella remains under royal protection while the petition is investigated. No contact from Victor. No public claim until council vote. Court adjourned. Victor shoved his chair back. You can't take her from me. George left the dais, stepped slow, certain. He stopped an arm's length away. You never had her, he said, too quiet for bravado, perfect for microphones. Victor's jaw worked. For the first time, he looked small under the lights. Guards moved him aside. Papers rustled. The chamber began to empty. Clarissa swept close as she passed Bella. Smile like a blade. Enjoy your window, little mouse. Bella met her eyes. I will. On the threshold, George waited. The severity in his face softened for one heartbeat. You spoke, he said. I'm tired of being quiet. Good. His gaze raked the benches, weighing enemies. They'll strike from shadows now. We move ahead of them. Let them try, Bella murmured, surprised to hear steel in her own voice. Outside, the steps were bright with afternoon and noise. Some signs still read tradition first, but others had changed, believe her. Law for all. A woman pressed a warm paper cup into Bella's hand and squeezed her fingers. No words. Enough. Mira guided them through the crush. Back in trance, she said. Victor will circle. Clarissa will smile on camera. The council will draft tricks. George matched Bella's pace, not leading, not pushing, a wall and a compass at once. Tonight we lock the house down, he said. Tomorrow we take the fight to them. How? By sunlight. His mouth tipped, not a smile, a promise. And by truth. A siren wailed downriver, then faded. The city breathed. Bella sipped the cup. It was too sweet and perfect. She looked back at the doors that had caged her life for years. They were shut now. They did not scare her. One breath, she thought. Then the next. Then whatever came. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel now, if you haven't, because you don't want to miss my next story. Chapter 8. The courthouse doors had barely closed when the storm began. Reporters, council scribes, and ordinary townsfolk lingered on the steps, voices carrying into the night. They repeated George's words over and over like a drumbeat. Slap her again and die. Some said it with awe, others with fear, and more with outrage. By the time Isabella was led into the Alpha King's black SUV, her cheeks burned hot, not from shame this time, but from the crushing weight of being seen. She sat stiffly in the leather seat, her hands folded tight in her lap. George slid in beside her, his presence filling the space with unspoken heat. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His golden eyes, still simmering from the trial, told her the wolf inside him hadn't settled yet. The silence stretched until Isabella whispered. Everyone saw. George's jaw flexed. Good. They'll think twice before touching you again. She looked away, staring at her reflection in the dark window. But what will they think of me? Back at the palace, the whispers grew louder. Servants exchanged uneasy glances as Isabella walked past, their bows stiffer than before. A low-born girl suddenly under the Alpha's protection, suddenly claimed in front of the council, was more scandal than they had seen in decades. Mira met her in the hall and gripped her hand firmly. Hold your head high, she urged in a hushed voice. They smell weakness. Don't give them any. Isabella tried, but her shoulders sagged under invisible weight. In the council chamber, the elders wasted no time. Clarissa stood among them, her jeweled dress catching the firelight as though she had arranged it so. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You've embarrassed this court, George, one of the gray-haired elders snapped. To threaten death in our sacred hall over a servant's daughter. Over my mate, George corrected coldly. His voice echoed off the stone walls. Clarissa's eyes narrowed, her smile tightening. Mate? Or distraction, she asked sweetly, the words dripping poison. Our people need a queen of noble blood, not a frightened girl with no lineage. The words stung Isabella, even though she wasn't in the chamber to hear them. By morning, she would. The palace walls always carried gossip like wildfire. George did not waver. He leaned forward, golden eyes flashing. I will not repeat myself. She is under my protection. Anyone who challenges, that challenges me. The elders murmured among themselves, but none dared push further that night. Still, Clarissa's smirk lingered, as if she had already won something unseen. Isabella stood on the balcony later, the night air sharp against her skin. Below, the city buzzed with torches and distant voices. She could almost hear her name floating in the crowd like an accusation. Victor's shadow had not left her either. She pictured his sneer as the guards dragged him from the courtroom. He had been humiliated. Yes, but humiliation could turn to vengeance. He would not stop until he found a way back into control. She wrapped her arms around herself. For so long, she had only dreamed of escaping his grip. Now, she feared she had stepped into something even more dangerous. George joined her, the air shifting with his presence. He didn't touch her, but his closeness was enough to send a shiver down her spine. You fear what they say, he murmured. I fear what they'll do, she admitted, her voice trembling. The council, Victor, Clarissa, they all hate me now. And I'm not strong like you. George turned, his gaze steady. Strength isn't about power. It's about standing when you're told to bow. Tonight you did that. Her throat tightened. She remembered how her voice had cracked in court, how her knees had nearly given way. But he looked at her as though she had carried steel in her spine. For the first time, She wondered if maybe she had. Across the city, in a dim tavern at the edge of the forest, Victor nursed a glass of bitter whiskey. His cheek still burned faintly where George's power had pressed him down. Around him sat men with hungry eyes, rogues who bent no knee to kings. "They all think the girl is safe under his roof," Victor said, his lips curling. "But walls can be breached. Wolves can be bought." The men listened, silent and waiting. Outside, the dark forest whispered, carrying rumors of rebellion. Back in the palace, Isabella finally closed her eyes, exhaustion dragging her into sleep. But even as dreams took her, a cold truth followed. George's vow had saved her in court, yet it had also lit a fire that could burn the kingdom itself. And she was at the center of it.
Chapter 9. The council chamber reeked of smoke and anger. Candles hissed as the elders argued, their voices sharp against stone. "He humiliated us," Elder Harrow barked. "A king who swears death in open court over a servant's child? This crown is bleeding respect." Lady Clarissa leaned near the hearth, her gown glittering like spilled wine. "The people are divided," she purred. "Some cheer. Others whisper he's ruled by a girl's tears." "Not tears," an elder muttered. "The wolf." Clarissa's smile sharpened. "Then we test the girl. Approving under the moon. If she cannot shift, the claim shatters. If she can, we question whether she is fit for a throne." Murmurs rose. No one noticed the footman by the door. He carried their words down the hill that night, straight to Victor's waiting glass of whiskey. Victor sat with rogues whose eyes gleamed too long in the dark. He listened, lips twisting. "Approving? Perfect. The girl will fail. But I want more than failure." He shoved a pouch of coins across the table. One door left unlatched. One scream in the dark. Let the king's wolf hear it and break. The rogues grinned, hungry for pay. At dawn, Isabella laced her plain dress with Myra's help, her fingers trembling. "They'll watch you harder today," Mira warned. "I know." Her voice was steady, though her stomach wasn't. On the terrace, Clarissa waited with two noble women at her side. She smiled sweetly when Isabella approached. "How brave, to walk after last night. If I were you, I'd hide." Mira bristled. "If I were you, I'd hold my tongue." Clarissa ignored her, fixing her gaze on Isabella. "Mate is a heavy word for a girl who's never shifted. Do you even feel your wolf?" The word stung. Isabella's throat closed. She had no answer. "Enough." George's voice rolled across the terrace, silencing everything. He strode forward, gold glinting in his eyes. "This rail is closed to guests who forget their manners." Clarissa bowed, her smile tight. Isabella followed George to the training court, her heart pounding. "You don't need to answer them," George said low. "You only need to stand." He nodded to the trainer. "Begin." The drills were simple. Breathing, breaking a grip, planting her feet. Isabella stumbled, failed, and flushed with frustration, but each time she reset. Her palms skinned. Her ribs ached. Still she kept going. Halfway through, something stirred inside her. Not a shift, not yet, but a thrum in her chest, matching the rhythm of her feet on sand. Her world narrowed to breath, stance, push, turn. "Good," the trainer murmured. By the end, her legs shook. When George offered her water, their fingers brushed. A spark leapt between them, sharp enough to steal her breath. His eyes met hers, and for a moment the world shrank to just them. A bell clanged. A runner arrived with a sealed scroll. George read quickly, his jaw hardening. "The council calls for approving," he said. 3 nights from now. Under the open moon." Cold spread through Isabella's stomach. "I can't shift." "Then we'll show them something stronger," George replied. His voice was iron. Before she could answer, Mira rushed in, face pale. She pressed a crumpled scrap into Isabella's hand. On it, jagged letters cut deep. "Silence bleeds." The paper slipped from Isabella's fingers. Fear rose like old smoke. But under it, the faint thrum in her chest returned, answering fear with heat. George turned to his guards. Lock the halls. Double the watches. No one moves without my mark. Then to Isabella softer. They want you to break before the moon. We won't give them the pleasure. Her throat tightened, but she lifted her chin. Then teach me. George's mouth curved, not into a smile but into a promise. All of it. Starting now. Chapter 10. 3 days of training blurred into one. Bella drilled until her palms blistered, until her ribs ached, until breath came ragged. Mira pushed her through stances and holds, making her fall and rise again. George watched, silent but steady, every order meant to keep her from breaking. At night Bella lay awake, listening to boots in the halls and wind in the banners. Fear came in waves, but under it something new stirred, an awareness deep in her chest, like a hum waiting for her to hear. In the markets, the city buzzed with gossip. Some said George had shown mercy. Others claimed he was ruled by a servant girl. Clarissa fueled it all, appearing on screens with her smooth voice. Tradition is a keel. Remove it, and the ship will capsize. Victor plotted in the shadows. In a shuttered garage he handed rogues crates of wolfsbane smoke. At the proving, he said, seed the air. She'll choke. He'll falter. The crown will stumble. Their laughter rattled the walls. On the final night, Bella dressed in a plain black gown, her hair braided tight. Mira fastened the last pin. No jewels. I'm going as myself, Bella said. George appeared in steel gray, cloak heavy on his shoulders. He offered his arm. She took it, her pulse steadying when his warmth brushed hers. The convoy cut through the city. Crowds pressed barriers, chanting, booing, shouting her name. Cameras followed every step as they entered the proving field. A ring of silver laid into stone, open to the night sky. The council waited. Clarissa stood in white, jeweled hair glittering like moons. The high elder raised his staff. By law, the alpha must prove his mate is no break of order. Speak. George's voice carried, firm and cold. I am George Adler. I claim Isabella Rivera not for use or pity. I claim her because my wolf knew her. And because I choose her. Harm to her is harm to me. Gasps rippled. Approval and outrage mixed. The elder turned. Isabella, do you stand? Bella swallowed, but her voice was clear. I stand. I am tired of being someone else's shame. He pulled me from a life that was killing me. I choose to live. The silver ring thrummed under her feet. Then the bell tolled. Once. Twice. Smoke slithered through the east vent, bitter and metallic. Guards staggered, coughing. Wolves dropped to their knees, eyes watering. Wolfsbane. Mira shouted, dragging Bella behind her. George ripped a filter from Levi's kit and shoved it into Bella's hand. She pressed it to her mouth, but her lungs already burned. Across the chaos, Victor stood maskless, smiling. George's wolf surged, golden fire in his eyes. Stay with me, he ordered, voice low and fierce. Breathe with me. 1, 2. Bella matched him, shaky but alive. The hum inside her chest swelled, stronger than before. Not words, not a shift, but a growl that was hers. She lifted her chin. I'm not running. George's lips tightened, almost a smile. Good. Then we finish this. Dax and Mira fought to clear the vents. Elders shouted for order. Clarissa pressed a cloth to her nose, watching with thin delight. The moon slid free of cloud, cold light washing the ring. Bella felt it touch her skin, and the hum inside rose like a tide. Her wolf pressed against the cage of her ribs, not bursting free, but awake. The elder slammed his staff. Begin the proving. George stepped back, giving her the circle. Bella stood tall, smoke stinging her throat, heart hammering, but her feet rooted firm. The crowd blurred, the council wavered. but the moon stayed steady above her. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. The proving had begun. If this moment pulled you in, subscribe now. There's so much more waiting in the next chapters. Chapter 11. Floodlights lit the courthouse plaza, the proving ground ringed by stone slabs older than the city. Crowds pressed close, voices hushed, every eye on the circle. Bella stood at its edge, palms clammy, breath shallow. Beside her, George radiated calm fury, his eyes edged gold. He didn't touch her, but his presence braced her spine. The council entered in silver chains. Clarissa glided in behind them, gown pale as frost, smile sharp as a blade. Victor followed, polished and smug, his gaze fixed on Bella like ownership. An elder lifted his staff. By law and moon, the Alpha's claim must be tested. Let the girl step forward. Bella moved into the circle. The stones hummed faintly beneath her shoes. She lifted her chin. Speak, the elder said. My name is Isabella Grace Navarro, she said. I am not property. I choose to stand. Her voice wavered once, then steadied. I will not be silenced again. A ripple moved through the crowd. George's jaw tightened, but pride warmed his gaze. Clarissa's voice rang sweet and poisonous. Or do you only repeat what the king tells you? Fear can feel like love. Bella turned, finding Victor. Say my mother's name, she demanded. Victor's lips curled. Lena was grateful for me. Wolves growled from the gallery. George's wolf surged, barely leashed. Enough, an elder snapped. The bond will show or fail. Let the moon decide. The moon cleared a cloud, bathing the stones in silver. Heat surged in Bella's chest. The hum inside her grew louder, sharper. Her senses stretched. She smelled smoke on guards' clothes, heard 3 heartbeats trip in fear. Her nails lengthened. Her eyes flashed gold. The crowd gasped. Victor moved. A chain whipped from his sleeve, hook aimed for Bella's throat. George lunged but couldn't intercept. Bella's body reacted. She caught the chain with both hands. Silver burned her skin, but she held fast. No, she said. Her voice doubled with something ancient. She twisted hard. The hook spun away, clattering on stone. Victor stumbled. George slammed him down, eyes blazing. Touch her again and you die. Alpha, an elder roared. Stand down. George didn't look up. He only checked Bella's hands, skin blistered, bleeding, yet already knitting closed under faint golden light. Gasps spread like wildfire. Clarissa's smile faltered. Tricks, she whispered, but her voice lacked bite. The staff struck stone. The bond is present, the elder admitted. George entered the circle. The noise hushed. His eyes never left Bella. Choice, he said. Not law. Do you choose me? Tears threatened, but Bella's voice was clear. Yes, but not to be saved. To stand beside you. A hush spread wider than the plaza. The stones pulsed warm under her feet. Wolves in the crowd bowed their heads. Victor roared and lunged again, a blade flashing from his coat. George's enforcers dropped from the terrace, slamming him to the ground. Steel clanged, shouts rose, but the chain of command held. Alive, George ordered. He will face sentence. The elder lifted his staff once more. The bond is witnessed. The proving is met. Applause and cries mixed. Cameras blinked red. Clarissa's face smoothed to glass, already plotting her next move. George finally reached for Bella's hands. His thumb brushed the fading burn. You bled for it, he said softly. I won't kneel again, she whispered back. And somewhere inside her, her wolf agreed. Chapter 12. The proving circle still smoked when Victor was dragged to his knees, silver cuffs biting deep. He raised his head toward Bella. You think this crown makes you more than nothing? He spat. George stepped in front of her. His voice was quiet, but the whole chamber stilled. No crown made her more. She was always more. You just couldn't see it. Marshal Dax read the charges: fraud, conspiracy with rogues, assault. Screens lit with evidence. Bank transfers, bribes, messages. Gasps rolled through the crowd. Victor laughed bitterly. Wolves follow fear, not law. Bella's voice cut through. I was afraid of you. Not anymore. The words landed like stone in still water. Even the elders leaned forward. George turned to the council. Judge me if you like, but judge him too. Or admit this court protects abusers when it should protect the weak. Silence stretched until Elder Marta rose. Her braid gleamed silver. The law is the law. Victor Hale, you will stand public trial and, if guilty, be exiled beyond the border. No return. The gavel struck. Guards hauled Victor away. His last words hissed toward Bella. You will always be nothing. She held his stare. I believed that once. Never again. A murmur of approval rippled through the gallery. Then George turned his gaze. Lady Clarissa, step forward. She obeyed, head high, but her smile had gone brittle. You shadowed Bella, tampered with reports, and bribed officials, George said. He held up a small tracker. You planted this on my car. You call it tradition. I call it treachery. Color drained from her cheeks. I served the pack. You served yourself, he cut in. You are confined to house arrest until inquiry. Your title remains. Your influence does not. Gasps. Clarissa's mouth tightened, but she lowered her head. George faced the chamber. 2 decrees. First, the victim's shield. Any citizen, human or wolf, may file for a shield order at this court. No fees. No delay. Violation means arrest. Second, audits of all guardianship estates. If you profit by control, you will face review. The square erupted. Some cheered. Some wept. For Bella, the roar felt like a tide lifting her from deep water. George stepped down, security tense, but he crossed to her without hesitation. Cameras caught it all. Isabella, he said, voice steady but softer now. Will you accept formal protection under my house until you decide your own path? Not command. Choice. Her throat tightened. She thought of slammed doors, cruel words, years of silence. Then she thought of this. Light air, her wolf stirring awake. I will, she said. On one condition. A hush fell. Make the shield permanent. Not a headline, habit. Train clerks. Print posters. Teach the number in schools. George inclined his head. Done. Applause shook the hall. Bella's name rose from the crowd. First scattered, then chanted. She closed her eyes. It could have felt heavy. Instead, it felt like a net catching her fall. George offered his hand. This time she took it. Warmth steadied her pulse. Outside, rain began again, soft as forgiveness. Epilogue. The courthouse no longer felt like a dungeon. Sunlight spilled through tall glass, warming the marble floor where once only shadows clung. Weeks had passed since Victor's trial, but echoes of that day still shaped the city. Bella walked the hall in a simple dress, no crown, no jewels. Children waved when they saw her. Women pressed her hands. Men bowed not to her title, but to her courage. She had become known by a name whispered with hope, the shieldbearer. The victim's shield had started as a decree. Bella had turned it into a movement. She sat with strangers who trembled like she once had. She translated law into simple words. She taught them how to stand, how to speak. Each story broke her heart, but each face reminded her why she could never go back to silence. George watched from the council steps, pride hidden in his steady stance. He still ruled with iron, but his eyes softened when they found her. She was not only his mate, she was his equal. One afternoon, Bella stood in the square where she had once been humiliated. Now hundreds gathered, voices rising not in gossip but in unity. No one is too small to be heard, she told them, her voice steady as stone. If you are silenced, come here. We will speak together." The crowd roared. For the first time, she felt not just safe but powerful. Later, on the palace terrace, George joined her. The city lights blinked like stars below. He took her hand, rough and warm. "You've changed them," he said. She shook her head gently. "We changed them. You saved me once, George. But I don't want to be remembered only as the girl who was saved." She turned, eyes glowing faintly with the wolf she had finally begun to embrace. "I want to be the woman who saves others." His smile was rare, but tonight it came easily. He bent his head, pressing his forehead to hers. "Then you will never fight alone." The night wind curled around them, carrying the sound of voices in the square, brave, unbroken, rising together. Isabella had been struck down and silenced. Now she stood not as prey, but as a shield. And beside her, the Alpha King was no longer alone. And that's the end of Bella and George's journey. Or is it just the beginning? Do you think Bella made the right choice becoming a voice for the voiceless? Comment your favorite moment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more werewolf romance stories.